Welcome to Wealth Well Done. Together, we'll cover a wide range of important topics surrounding money and the impact it has on our lives. From the sophisticated and highly valuable planning techniques of the ultra-wealthy to the commonly underutilized biblical teachings. Together, we'll work to improve our relationship with money and our effectiveness in stewarding it well. Here's your host, Eric Scovill.
Welcome to the 72nd episode of the Wealth Well Done podcast, where we focus on tactical, practical, and spiritual ways to help you do your wealth and your life well done. Back again here with Kristen, Brianna, Emily, and Alicia. So one of the things that we were talking about at the end of the last episode was about information suppression. And I wanted to go into the political side of that with what Freespoke does and how you guys are helping stop that. Because the information suppression, I was kind of thinking about this, like we expect that in communist countries. You know, you hear of what people in China think today, and their view on what's happening inside China or what's happening in the outside world doesn't match the rest of the world. Mm-hmm. And so we have information suppression in other countries. We don't really think of that as, like, you wouldn't think that that's happening here, not in the United States. But we know that, you know, propaganda is effective when you don't remember what's happened, when you don't remember history, when you don't know what's happening in the outside world. And so how are you guys what are you seeing in the suppression of information, and how are you trying to fight that?
So I mentioned in the prior podcast that search engines, really all of them, operate off of wanting to give you the result you're looking for, so you're happy and you stick around. So there is a positive initial objective there, and it really is usually recency and relevancy. So that's how you tune the algorithm to make sure you're getting recent and relevant results. And that should really operate well. There shouldn't be anything suppressed in that, and we should be able to move forward. What we see is then you have a human. A human is tuning that algorithm, really, at the end of the day. You're saying, this result's off. We're going to tune up this. We're going to tune down that. And it gives you an opportunity to go in and influence that result. So during a COVID era, when the U.S. government and Google, who just really objectively is closely tied to the U.S. government by the lobbyists and, you know, how big and influential they are, they have a relationship, they talk. And so when individuals in those seats say it may be dangerous for people to hear these doctors who are saying something against the vaccine, and we're afraid it's going to impede progress of humanity in their definition, they have the capability to stifle, to suppress, or to censor that search result. So it should operate clean. The system is there to operate clean, but that person in control, that gatekeeper, can put a finger on that scale. I would highlight, you know, COVID is a controversial topic. I would highlight one that is just straight fact that you guys can look up today. There was a New York Times editorial piece published back in 2020. A Pulitzer Prize winning journalist wrote an article entitled "The Children of Pornhub." And it really was an expose on Pornhub. But about 3/4 of the way through that article, it stated Google supports the business model of child molesters. And then it gives a paragraph on when you search teen porn or young porn in Google, the results that you get. Today, if you search New York Times Children of Pornhub in Google, you will not find that article. So it just shows you that it is a business. That business has an objective. And as a result, there's the capability of suppressing or censoring results.
Okay. So why don't we just switch off politics and jump into porn then? Because porn. So Google, it's like 1 out of 8 searches or something like that is porn. It is. I don't know if that is accurate or relevant, but or is up to date. But I know that there's so much about porn, and the Freedom Fight is an organization that is working to combat porn inside. Really, they're looking a lot inside the church. And so some of the stats that they share here that they've got from their studies or from other people's studies is 64% of Christian men are using 64% of Christian men are using porn monthly. The average age of first exposure to porn is 8. They're half of the practicing Christian college women watch porn. Half of Christian college men are not just watching, but addicted to porn. And 54% of pastors say they struggle with porn. Porn is an epidemic, like blows COVID out of the water. It blows the opioid epidemic out of the water. Like, this is such a big deal, and it has, it's ravaging across the world, especially in the United States here. So you guys decided to take a stand against that. And the analogy you've used before is you are, first of all, you're fighting Goliath, as David here, being, big tech, but now you're going to, tie an arm behind your back and maybe go blindfolded too when you say we're not going to track people's data and we're not going to offer porn. Why is that such a big pillar that you guys stand on now?
Yeah, I would give you one other example of how internet technology is built off pornography. DuckDuckGo is a major competitor to Google, and their advertising out of the gate was a woman with a husky voice into sports talk radio at night, and she'd say, "What are you searching for? You don't want us to know? Or you don't want to tell us? We don't want to know. Search privately with DuckDuckGo." So I'm like, great. Like, looking at competitor models, how did they build their early user base? Oh, they built it off porn users. And that really has really been the backbone. And I am appreciative of the opportunity to talk about it here because I didn't know. When we started building this product, the search engine, we didn't plan to not show pornography. My co-founder said, let's just not show porn. And I wasn't an advocate of that. I thought, we're a search engine that lets all the information into the light. Don't think you're going to hide a bad idea by hiding the fact that it existed. Let it debate. And so that's always been my approach until I learned that online pornography is the third most common form of sex trafficking. And that's according to data from the National Human Trafficking Hotline. Those are women saying, I didn't choose to be here. I didn't choose to have that captured on video. Or some women are like, yeah, I was in a desperate place and I signed to do this, but then they took it to this crazy extreme and I didn't have the chance to come back. And now I'm trapped and now I can't get a regular job. I would give a shout out to the organization Fight the New Drug, which talks about that side of pornography. It talks about what it does with men. It talks about what it does in marriages and women. And it's very non-judgmental. It's just the scientific fact. What's happening to your prefrontal cortex when your impulse control is impacted at such a young age and you don't really know what that feeling was and you come back to it. So just really learning, I can continue on the statistics path, but learning those statistics. The one other I'd point out is the problem of child sexual abuse material. So in this world, they don't call that pornography because it's really just sex abuse, but Pepperdine Law Review published that 1 out of 5 pornographic images is of a child. So once you start learning this data, it's just clear no future technology can continue to be a part of this problem. We have to be a part of the solution.
Yeah. Well, thank you for taking the stand against it. I know obviously some of the stuff that we're doing on the fight against trafficking is we're getting, there's different components to the trafficking fight. You have the macho man wants to go and storm doors and start slinging bullets around and rescuing children. You have the whole other side of this, which is how do you rehabilitate a child who has been, raped 10 plus times a day for the last however many years and also made to be addicted to drugs? Yeah. And how do you restore their identity in Christ? It's a monumental overhaul. But then who is supplying who is supplying all these, people coming into this? And then back to that, what's creating the demand? And so what's going on inside that allows people, as we talked about a little bit with some of the other things, when you get, excuse me, this is what the Tucker Carlson interview I was talking about yesterday in the last episode. They're referencing that when you have a vaccine like the Hep B vaccine, and there's just you go and ask doctors what the need for this is, and there's no good explanation behind that. And then Emily, step in if I'm wrong with this, but then they talk about once someone becomes once someone has some type of chronic medical issue, they're in. They're in. And the medical community, not the medical community, the business side of medicine profits off of someone who still lives but has some type of suffering and some type of ongoing chronic condition. Inside here, when you get someone into porn, that spiral just grabs them, and it's so hard to get out of that. I'm obviously I've shared this before, but I've dealt with that, getting out of that addiction myself, and it is brutal to get out of here. So figuring out what you guys are doing in the trafficking fight is a big piece of this, which is trying to cut off the demand.
Right.
And I think that there's so many places we can go with this, of opening people's eyes to what the fight looks like inside. You have, because it's so bad that you have all these national security agents who are having all sorts of psychological issues because they've been forced to watch thousands upon thousands of hours of child porn, trying to get the data to try to go fight against it. So this thing has its tentacles everywhere. From a business standpoint, how much does that hurt you guys to not do that, or how much does that? I guess I don't even know where to take this. I really want people to understand that they should be supporting you guys just from that standpoint alone of trying to not feed the beast that is creating more of this child porn industry.
And we really are just one step in that process. But like you said, it's a stand you can take to say, hey, we can build technology that advances human flourishing. We don't have to just succumb to that base level of humanity that, we're going to feed this dark underbelly so we can make money. And I think we can do it. God is going to be at the core of this. I learned this, I think, for the first, honestly, 4 years of me building this company. I thought I was building it. And God has made very clear in the last year that he is building it, and I'm the vessel. So it is going to take an act of God to build a search engine that advances human flourishing and doesn't support that pornography industry, but it's doable. And really, just to be clear, so people know what you're getting, at Freespoke, you're not going to stumble across pornography. We put the blockers, we have the safe search turned up. You can't turn it off. So videos and images are really blocked. On search results, if I had a mom say in a safe search, she was just trying to search for how old is too old to spank your child, and spank is a keyword. So in some search engines, you don't get any results. And then you end up turning off that safe search because you're like, okay, I just need to be able to search and find basic content. But in Freespoke, we do contextual filtering, so you can still get information and search results. So that's really what we provide. If an adult, if a child is deeply trying to find pornographic content, they will find it. It is really littered throughout the internet, and it's just hard to block everything. So what we're looking at doing, and we'd love feedback over time, is working with parents, build it with parents in mind, and say, okay, if you have this as your default search engine for your child, then we would like to work with you and give you a summary of your children's searching behavior each week, and we can flag keywords, and then partner with somebody like Fight the New Drug or some other great organizations that say, here's how you have a conversation with your kid early on, because these are very natural tendencies, and they're inundating their little brains early on, and they're going to be curious and they're going to want to search. So here's how to be aware of what they're searching for and some resources to have those conversations early.
Alicia, you have amazing young men as children. Absolutely amazing young men as children. How have you guys, and share only what you're comfortable sharing, but how have you guys navigated this, and what tools have you put in place, and where did you find that those, what else did you need? Where do they fall short?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think again, I said how I continue to be surprised at, I'm not sure why, but the evil nature of man, right? Like, how is it possible to stumble across that? And then the more you do research, you're like, oh no, people intentionally let you stumble across that.
Right, they set it up for you.
Yes. It's like, oh, if a child's going to search this, if we just put this a letter off, they might misspell it and then see this instead. And so we've definitely encountered that. And it's a child by child thing. Like you say, with health, like what are your struggles? How do you need this? And I think it's awesome to have tools like this to put into place, but eventually it comes back to your relationship that you have with your child and like continuing to talk about it and talk about the why behind it. And Kristen, that's what like, I love the idea of promoting Freespoke and saying they're porn free, because I feel like so much of our culture is going to be like, why? It's just what kids do. Kids look at porn.
Yeah.
And so it's such a great opportunity and open door to have the conversation about it's not, these are all the detriments. These are all the terrible things that happen. So even just that opportunity to talk about, no, this is evil. This isn't just a natural part of growing up, and it's not the world you grew up in. And just the cycle you're talking about, like the shame, the shame cycle that comes with that. And so just the fallout of even stumbling upon pornography, what that does to your child's brain and how they have to keep fighting for it. And that it's not like, I love that idea that you could get like a summary of the searches and things like that, just to continue to have conversations. But again, like, so everything about parenting, right, comes back to the heart of like, we have to talk about why and how did that happen?
Yeah.
So
I was going to ask, Kristen, do you have, can parents trust the traditional, I've got my, what do they call it, the safe search or the safe content? Like, can parents trust that? Or
it is common and it does block a lot. So I think having that on and leaving that on is a good tool in your arsenal. So I'm not going to say anything negative against it. I would just reinforce what Alicia said. And I have had experts in this field say it to me many times. Kristen, you can talk about your product as one of the tools, but the only thing that actually keeps kids safe today is an open line of conversation between the parent and the child. Mm-hmm. So when they mess up, not if, when they mess up, they have that conversation they can go to. It's just so pervasive, like you both said, that it's out there, safe search or not. And the one example that comes up a lot, so the National Center on Missing and Exploited Children, one more statistic, in just last year alone, they reported over 39 million tips into their cyber tip line of online child sexual abuse, a company with over 105 million documents proving that. But they also showed a massive increase in enticement. So there are criminal organizations out there enticing your children as a friend to send them a photo. Send me a naked photo. I'm your friend, whatever. I haven't experienced this firsthand, but I've read it extensively. And so a child does that because that's what kids are doing today. And then it's blackmail immediately. So that's just another FYI that this is happening. And so those kids get scared. They messed up, there's shame, they don't know where to go. And that open line of conversation is really the only line of defense.
Right. And the conversations you have to have with your kids these days. Like I just recently was reading about that, like teenage suicide from blackmail like that. And, you're thinking, I read that story and think, I surely don't have to talk to my kids about that. And then you're like, no, I kind of do. Like we need to just cover our bases.
That are falling into that, right? Like,
yeah,
it's happening to everyone.
Yeah. It kind of seemed like a good segue into why is Isaiah 41 so powerful to you?
I feel like God gave me Isaiah a while ago, and I was reading the whole thing. And Isaiah is a large book with a lot of devastation at the beginning, and it kind of comes around at the end. But 41 is just, this is my servant, which I'm well pleased, who's bringing justice to the nations and mending broken lives. And that's early on in this scripture, and then in that chapter and verse. And I just think that's what we're called. That's what I feel called to do. And I think people who want to rally around and say, Mark Zuckerberg stood in front of Congress and he had the families behind him with their kids on a poster board who had died because of this blackmail. So tech companies, there needs to be justice. These companies know that they're opening this door. When you try to switch to Freespoke as your default search engine, it'll say 17 and older is the age range. Why? Because Google has decided that to be a search engine and have access to the web, you need to be 17 and older, yet they're paying to be your default search engine everywhere. Like there needs to be, these companies know what they're doing. They know they're feeding your kids pornography. They know that this neurological warfare is being waged against you. So I feel passionate about bringing justice to the nations, mending the broken lives that come out of that injustice that has occurred. But the next piece in that scripture that's really speaking to me is the language is like without a broken reed. And so there's a concept of, and I need to work on it because I kind of want to be the flipping tables Jesus. And that doesn't really that doesn't always reach people. And so it's like just kind, reach out, connect with people and pull them in gently and consistently is really what I think that the verses in Isaiah are teaching us that I've really taken to heart.
Yeah, that's good. I think it's that we've been talking about this a little bit too, that there is this balance here of Jesus is absolutely a warrior, but he's also kind of gentle and humble at heart. So that there's both. When you go to the school side of things, or when we have drag queen story hour, and when we have these, all of these, homosexual men come, singing this, that video that was up about "We're coming for your children," you have to, you want to scream, I want to go into full fight mode, and so you have to go after protection of your children, and the three of you have done that a lot from the schooling system. So we want to kind of switch gears a little bit and just talk a little bit about homeschooling and why you guys have made the choice to do that. Because I think there is a calling on us as parents, especially the mothers, to, it shouldn't just be the mothers, but I think it kind of default has turned into that because a lot of men have kind of tagged out of this. But why have you guys gone that route?
I think for me, I don't feel like the most equipped or knowledgeable, to teach our children, but just removing the whole idea of education, it does not need to be the most important. Yes, they need to, learn how to read and write and do math and just basic functional things. But what is most important is God, and teaching them to be a servant for God and a laborer. But I think my driving force is I want our influence on our children's life to be the majority. Whereas if I'm sending them to school, I'm no longer the majority influence, because I get them on nights and weekends essentially. And the school system, whether it be public or Christian school, it's the teacher and their peers are now their majority influence. And I just didn't have peace about it. So that's my why.
Yeah. Well, they're going to learn a worldview somewhere. And so that is definitely a driving force for us, that God be at the center of it. And for me, really, relationship. I want to have relationship with my kids. I don't want to just get them on evenings and weekends. And I feel like the more I learn about our modern school system, the more I want to run in the opposite direction.
Yeah.
And so I think it's inefficient. I think there's indoctrination. And so I want my kids to learn the good, true, and beautiful, and to see how God is the center of it all, and be productive members of society. So,
yeah. I feel like I have a little bit of a different journey into this homeschooling realm. I actually was homeschooled through 8th grade, and I hated it and was like, I will never, ever homeschool my children. My mom scarred me for life, right? It was terrible. And so when I had kids, we put them into public school. And within those 3 years of them attending public school, a couple of things happened. One, I started to become aware of how all of 4 of my siblings, including myself, we thought very differently than everyone else. And I was surprised by that. I felt like we were, like the super nerdy weirdos who like wore, jean dresses and, like everyone was like, oh, but you're so normal when they would find out we were homeschooled. And so we had this kind of stigma. And so entering into school, I thought I hated it. My kids are going to miss out. And at the time, my son had some neurological issues. And so I was like, I need the support that the school system can offer and all these different things. But so as those 3 years progressed, we realized several things. One, obviously realized like, I am like having almost daily fights with these teachers because I don't like what they're agreeing to or teaching, or not even teaching as much as like behaviors that were accepted or unaccepted. And so that was like kind of like a red flag initially of like, wait a minute, are we actually missing out on something? And so then kind of fast forward, there was just so many different conversations that we had to have with our kids that I was like, I am not ready to have these conversations yet. And realizing like in the same way that the Lord had to take me on a journey to redefine health, he had to take me on a journey to redefine what education really was. And really, my daughter was coming home, with awards like every day. And it wasn't until we actually started homeschooling and pulled her out after first grade, she was going into second grade, that we realized she couldn't read. And I was like, wait, hold on. Like, we need to redefine, like, she's like getting all these awards because she was socially like she, was doing great, versus my son, who we had daily conversations with because he wasn't fitting that model and they wanted medication. They were really pushing medication. And it started really going against everything that we were doing at home in terms of biblically and holistically in our health and nutrition, all this stuff. And we're constantly fighting all the snacks in school and all the, just the rewards and the treats and the conversations. And to Brianna's point, my son went through all of kindergarten calling me his teacher's name. And I would be like, I'm not Mrs. Sorelli. Like, I'm your mom. What, and like just that like awareness that like, while they were great teachers and they loved them well, like they were spending most of their time with him. And so I feel like that has started to be like, we could control the narrative better. We could support their brains, right? Like my son and daughter both, like they have very divergent brains that need to be supported in certain ways. And they weren't fitting that. And because they weren't fitting that, medication was being pushed pretty heavily. And so that would be a whole other conversation, of just the way like medication is so pushed, and just, with even the porn, like our brains, like we have a dopamine generation, and these kids, like half of his class was on medication, at 5 and 6. And so just that idea that I was like, oh my goodness, wait a minute, like this is not how I want to teach him, and what I want to support him. So obviously, classical model helped, because that was the other thing is like they were both given iPads, in kindergarten with very little restrictions. And so again, it was just like, wait, hold on. We're trying to do the opposite at home. And then you're going for 8 hours to school and having a different conversation.
Yeah. I'd love to take up public service announcement. Sorry, I'll be short. Just to say, for parents who are like their kids are coming home with a tablet right now, like this month and coming weeks, just take your tablet and in Google Chrome, make Freespoke your default search engine. It's at least a step in that direction. And then the one other thing, Emily, I think you're a good personification of what I've been thinking of. You just present another path. And you do it very calmly, and there's education, and you're confident, there's facts to back it up. But oftentimes I can be like, I got to get people's attention. And I think there's power in just that, like, stable, consistent presentation. Sorry, Alicia, I cut you off.
Oh, no, I was just going to say how many times people make the decision to homeschool out of fear. And then I was thinking about that, how you're not critically thinking about it. But just that idea to figuring out your why for homeschool, not basing it on fear. Like, these are the terrible things I don't want, but what do you want? Kind of like what you were talking about with health. What do you want? Yeah.
The freedom to control the influences of your kids, the freedom to control the food that they're eating, the freedom to control that whole environment, or teaching them to learn differently. We've had Isaac Bennett on here on a podcast before, and Isaac was homeschooled, and he learns it's such a different way than I do. And that's not just, one blanket statement, but I learned through that a lot of homeschooling kids learn differently. Like they learn better than what I learned in school. We were talking about this off camera or before we recorded. We took enough information to pass the test and then move on, and that's it. And you forget all of it. And so it's different when you're able to give that attention. And there are a lot of issues with the school. Trump saying, we're going to get rid of the Board of Education, all these other things. Like there's a lot of issues inside the school, but in some cases you cut them some slack too. Like how does one teacher handle 30 plus kids in a room? They're not able to give the attention that you can give one-on-one or one on 3 or 4.
Absolutely.
So there's such incredible benefits to that.
Yeah. And I love, Kristen, to your point, like we're very, very blessed to be able to make the choice that we've made. And I've walked with a lot of clients who don't have that choice, but to give them even just to be able to put a different search engine on their phone or on their tablet, is a level of empowerment. You may not be able to control the whole narrative based on other circumstance, right? And God's grace always covers that. But to be able to have other options, so you do feel like you're making some form of movement forward and protection is such a cool tool to have.
What's the last tiny topic to address? We've got this other thing. So you've got kids coming home with Chromebooks and for school right now. But you also have adults who are getting sucked into the politics behind the election here, and this is the time of increased division amongst the country, amongst people inside communities, church, and even in families. And so, will you talk a little bit about what you guys see in terms of, obviously? So we've got this. I want to maybe just hit it again. How do you guys handle political searches, and how do people get information from you? And I've got a follow-on question after that.
Sure. Yeah. Just a high level, not only our algorithm, but our user interface is designed to always show you both sides. So we work with 3 established organizations that put a bias label per publisher. That's All Sides, Media Bias, Fact Check, and Ad Fonts. 3 different organizations label content at the publisher level, and we just apply those labels onto the news sources. So you're always going to get that left, right, and middle side by side. You can quickly read both sides. We have an AI generated summary of the articles as well. If you don't, have limited time, and you can compare, see where there's overlap, and people are more likely to feel like they've gotten the full story and they've made up their own mind once they can see both sides.
Okay. And so thank you. So then where my mind went with that is knowing the stakes here with the election, and knowing the way that manipulation has just expanded so much now. You think of before the election, there's always the bigger, there's some big breakthroughs, whether this is Hillary's laptop or something with, Hunter Biden, or this is Mar-a-Lago with Trump, or there are big things that will come out there. And so have you guys seen, can you not even tell inside your searching, or tracking how people use your search engine? Do people tend to go to both sides of the article, or can you even tell?
Yeah, we don't gather too much data, so I can't speak to that very directly, but from user insights, the impression we get is most people stick in their one point of view. A user insight I thought was interesting is, so for Netflix, if you're like, Emily, what do you watch? And Emily's like, I only watch historical documentaries. And I go look at Emily's Netflix, and it's all romantic comedies. And both are interesting. So what she actually does and what she wants the world to think she does is just important for a product. And in Freespoke, you may say, I always look at both sides and I compare, and then I feel informed. But likely you're in a hurry, and you're likely to check on your side. But what the user interface allows is you're going to see a headline from the other side. So even if you want to end up going in and filtering and only see one side eventually, out of the gate, you're presented with both.
Okay. What do you guys, do you have, as a company, getting ready for that type of, the political aspect of your product here, what are you guys doing, gearing up for the election?
It's I would have to say this is probably one of the most enjoyable parts because we just don't censor. Our system is set up to not control information in that way. So in Google, when you're trying to search Trump assassination and you're not getting that autocomplete, in Freespoke, you search it and you get the left and right perspective on it. We're just naturally established to help you see that full story. We do see a very large uptick around this time of people saying, okay, now I feel that insecurity more acutely, and I'm going to go to Freespoke and make sure I can see both perspectives. We do have a specific election portal where you can go in and we highlight the top stories from the different perspectives in any given day. You can see the polling, you can check your ballot, so you can see what's going to be on your ballot when you go to vote in November. So we do enhance some of the offering around this time. But just our engine and our interface and our algorithm designed to show both viewpoints is set up so you can really navigate this election season.
I'll give a plug for that. I'd encourage you, even if you were skeptical of, wanting to switch search engines, just go to Freespoke and check out the election portal. It's fantastic. It is very informative for you.
It helps you see that I mentioned in the last podcast, it's my passion, that debate of ideas is so important. If you don't know the other side, you really don't know anything. Just knowing one side is not being fully informed. So people say it feels refreshing. So I hope your audience feels the same way.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I love the viewpoint of these three women, but if all I did was listen to these three women, like, this is our own echo chamber. We've got this holistic side to it. We are removing ourselves from the education system and from a lot of the government type stuff, and we're Christian, and there's an echo chamber here. This feels a lot more like truth to me than something outside of that. But I think it's dangerous for us to not hear what the other person's doing. I love what you said about our country being founded on the debate and the art of that. Which means we have to listen. We have to care enough to hear what the other person has to say as well.
Study deeply.
Yeah. Okay. Kristen, Alicia, Emily, Bree, thank you guys so much for the time to come in here, for sharing this, for being willing to not only step out and share your views here, but again, like I keep saying, the way that you guys are defending your families, defending your communities, Kristen defending the world. Thank you for what you do. Freespoke.com. Please go check it out. And let this be the call to action here. I dare you to try it for a month. Check out the political side of this as you become an informed voter, because we don't want people who just vote because of the color on next to their name. But we want people to be informed about their voting. And so I'd encourage you to check that out there, but try it out for a month and see if that doesn't change the way that you start taking in information.
Let's build a better future. It's not the technology that's the problem, it's the business model, and we can change that.
Yeah, and you keep going back to the idea of human flourishing, and that's what you're after, and I think that's exactly where you need to be. So we support you. We will be praying for your business and for the right people to continue to come alongside you guys and to see the growth that God has planned in His perfect time.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you again for listening to Wealth Well Done. Be sure to subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast player, and together we'll continue to improve our relationship with money and our effectiveness in stewarding it well.